Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Morning Brew live on Brew Sports. So I welcome you inside the studio on a Tuesday edition of the program. A little different format for you today, unfortunately. If you look wide here on the set, there's somebody missing. Unfortunately, Jaymee, my esteemed co-host for the Morning Brew, is out on assignment today. She will not be joining us today. So you'll be hanging down with me today, and you're going to be hanging with two other great correspondents as well on the program today. We're going to be joined by Peter Fiorentino in just a little bit to talk about the World Baseball Classic and the latest breaking news about Tim Tebow. We're also going to be joined by Caleb Wahlgren as well, one of our NFL correspondents, to talk about the latest proposed NFL rule changes in the free agent market and all that other great stuff as well too. So we're going to get to all that in just a little bit. We do wish you a good morning. We hope your day is going well so far. Of course, it is still kind of early, as we know, but we know that the sports world never stops, to say the least. So a couple of great things to get to this morning. Some interesting articles that I feel like a lot of you folks need to be aware of, honestly, as the day is moving along. I don't know if those of you that watched yesterday on the program, you will have probably heard us talk a little bit about the NBA proposed issues that are going on with significant players sitting during big nationally televised games. That's got a lot of people fired up right now. And the commissioner, Adam Silver, actually sent a note to all of the NBA teams letting them know his thoughts about it, basically, and just kind of saying, look, guys, we need to potentially put together significant penalties for teams and players if you do not start your high-profile players. That's going to be a big issue right there. I mean, we talked about this on a couple of the other shows yesterday that, as a big reference, the English Premier League, they fine their teams £15,000 for nationally televised games if they don't play their best players. If they're physically fit and they are not able, and they just choose not to play them, that's a big deal, and that's that's £15,000. So the NBA kind of looking like they might be moving towards that route as well too, because they're going to be getting the NBA Board of Governors together on April 6th in New York, and they're going to be talking about significant penalties for teams that don't abide by the league's standing rules for providing notice to the league office, their opponent, and the media immediately upon determination that a player will not participate in the game due to rest. Not sure how I feel about that, honestly. I feel like we were kind of divided about that yesterday on the program, in the sense of, do people, can you actually do something like this? Can you actually shut down, can you control basically a player? Can you control a team? If I, as a coach, say, you know what, I just would prefer not to have, this player play today just because, we've got a big playoff series coming up soon and I don't want to get them too tired. I don't really know if there's an easy way to go around that, in all honesty. What I do find interesting, though, is that the NBA needs to have this governing bodies, group get together basically and say, look, we need to come up with rules. Why is this not a rule already? If this is such a big deal about it, I mean, if people are so confused or so crazy about it, why not try to put more rules into place to potentially wipe stuff like this out? So that way you're not, spinning around basically saying, well, I don't know what to do. Listen, if you want LeBron James to play, you need to realize that he is human. He is not there for your show and entertainment. He is a human. He is going to play the games that he is the most comfortable and capable of playing at times. So just because you as the consumer wants to watch LeBron James, X amount of days a year, doesn't mean he's going to always be able to do that. So I think the fans, the league, the team, they need to all back off a little bit, in all honesty, and let the players play, let the players rest when they need to. You're not hurting the NBA product overall. It's not like all these players are retiring all at once. It's just them basically saying, look, guys, we just need a little bit of extra time because there's a lot that we go through on a daily basis, and we need to sometimes rest. And yes, unfortunately, the schedules line up the way they do, where they just can't play that extra game. Not the end of the world. TV ratings aren't going to go that crazy. The NBA, listen, you're great, but you're not one of the... You're a premier league in that regards, but you're not... Listen, if LeBron James isn't on TV, most people aren't going to just tune in to watch the NBA on national television. That's kind of the realistic side of it. I mean, if the Milwaukee Bucks and the Sacramento Kings are playing on ESPN, no one's going to really tune in for that game. Nobody cares. They care about the Spurs. They care about the Warriors. They care about the Cavaliers. Maybe the Celtics a little bit too because they've been decent recently. Maybe the Knicks just because of New York. But aside from that, if those 4 or 5 teams aren't on national television, nobody cares. no one's going to tune in. So the fact that you're looking to potentially fine all of the teams just because you've got players that are, thinking about, well, I'm gonna rest just because I want to. That's a little bit crazy to me personally. A couple of comments on Facebook. Good morning to you, Liz. Good morning to you, Brew. Brew says he's on his way to the airport or from the airport. Brew, where are you flying to today, sir? You were a very travel-friendly, heavy man on the road. I don't know where you're headed off to, but I wish you a safe journey this morning. If you're just tuning in and you haven't gotten the sad news, there is no Jaymee Ebbers this morning, unfortunately. So for all of you that are, hashtag Team Jaymee, you're going to have to, unfortunately, wait a day or two until Jaymee is back with us. She was on assignment this morning and will hopefully rejoin us tomorrow or the next day once she is done doing everything that she has to get done. So we will miss you, Jaymee. I hope that you have a wonderful day. As you can see, I'm giving a high five to my made up Jaymee over there, basically. So, but like I said, we've got some great guests that are going to be joining us. We're going to get to Peter Fiorentino here in just a brief moment. One of the other things I find interesting, and I'm going to ask this to Caleb Wahlgren as well too when we talk about it, but I feel like you have to talk about it briefly. The headline itself kind of hits me in a weird way here. Donald Trump takes shot at Colin Kaepernick's free agent status. Donald Trump, of course, the president, reignited his feud with Colin Kaepernick, according to ESPN, and he says that basically, Donald Trump is taking credit for the fact that Colin Kaepernick still doesn't have a job. I'm not sure how many times in the past that the President of the United States has personally come out and said, yeah, I'm proud of the fact that you do not have a job because I'm the reason because of that. There's a lot of different ways you can go with this, honestly, folks, but the biggest thing that I struggle with I'm not going to turn this political because I'm not a political person, but the biggest thing that I struggle with all of this is that why does Donald Trump care about an NFL quarterback just because that he happens to not be, white? He's not fully American, whatever. He's got bigger things to worry about, don't you think? I feel like if you're the president of the United States, you're trying to worry about, bombings in Iraq, or you're trying to keep immigrants safe, or you're trying to create jobs, or keep the economy from tanking. Like that should be something you should be focusing on, not going out on the record to be like, yeah, I think it's a great thing that Colin Kaepernick doesn't have a job because of me, basically. It's a very Trump thing to do, but at the same time, I feel like you've got bigger and better things that you could really focus on, Donald Trump. So I'm not a big fan of that personally, but like I said, I'm going to ask Caleb Wahlgren about that a little bit too when we talk to him, one of our baseball insider, or one of our football insiders here rather. Brew says he's flying to D.C. What are you doing in D.C.? Do you have a meeting with Donald Trump as soon as we were talking about him? Brew decides to fly to D.C. or something like that. Not officially sure, but all right. Let us get to our baseball correspondent, Peter Fiorentino, as he will be joining us here now on the Morning Brew. Peter, we wish you a good morning, sir, and how are things going for you there out in the great state of New York?
Baxter, good morning. Thanks for having me on. Things are good. It was a cold spell last week, had a pretty big snowstorm, but we're back to some semi-warm weather here.
Semi-warm weather. What does that entail in the New York State? Is that like 40, 50 degrees?
Yeah, it's waking up in the 30s, might dip into the 40s, but probably back down to the 30s before the end of the
day. I feel like if broadcasting doesn't work for you, that was a great meteorologist. Be like, your 5-day forecast, waking up, it's going to be in the 30s, guys. But hey, right around that noontime, 43 degrees and sunny. You guys should really get out there and enjoy that weather.
Yeah, I haven't ruled it out.
It's a good fallback career. I mean, it's the only part of TV news that isn't unscripted. So kind of a funny thing about that. But all right, Peter. Well, the big thing right off the bat is the World Baseball Classic that's taking place right now. The United States, not making it to the final, unfortunately, due to running into some tough teams down the stretch. But the one question I always like to ask people that we have on to talk about the World Baseball Classic is, how much stock and how much time and effort do you put into following the World Baseball Classic? Because honestly, until I found out about it a couple weeks ago, I forgot that it was even still a thing. Now, I know you work in baseball, so of course maybe you have a little bit more of an inside track on that. But how do you view the World Baseball Classic as a whole and its impact on the game of baseball internationally?
Well, first of all, I'm a huge fan of it, I got to say. I think it's an opportunity for the players in Major League Baseball to build some camaraderie with people in their country. You look at a team like Puerto Rico that has division rivals in Javi Baez of the Cubs and Yadier Molina of the Cardinals, and they get a chance to play next to each other every single game in the World Baseball Classic and build some camaraderie there. So a team that, and a couple of players that wouldn't ordinarily get to play together, get to be a part of the same team and have a lot of pride in their country for that stretch of games. I also think it's like a bonus to spring training. A lot of these guys, if they were in spring training, they would get a couple at bats here and there, usually pulled by the third or fourth inning after they have one or two at bats, make a couple plays in the field, so they're rested for the season. This gives them an opportunity to play games before the season begins and actually get that competitive atmosphere. So they hit the ground running with opening day. They're not sitting there lackadaisical and kind of like laying back like, oh man, spring training. The opening day hits, bam, you got to turn it on. They've been competitive. They've been on fire for a couple of weeks with emotion.
Yeah, and one of the teams that has been on fire too here, just to kind of go off of that, has been Puerto Rico. I mean, the team that has surprised some folks, though, was the team that they beat in Netherlands. I guess for me personally, not knowing a lot about the international baseball circuit, I didn't realize that Netherlands was good at baseball. I thought they were more of a soccer nation and, more of the European side of sports things. But I guess this is kind of a testament to how baseball has started to take over the world a little bit more, especially in the European countries.
Exactly. And yeah, you're looking at a lot of different players that have dual citizenship that can kind of choose which country they want to play for. And to be honest with you, I was pretty surprised as well. I didn't know that many players who would identify with the Netherlands and kind of play for them. Andrelton Simmons, the Angels shortstop, was a fantastic leadoff hitter for them. Xander Bogaerts, the Red Sox third baseman, Jurickson Profar, who plays for the Rangers. So they do have top to bottom. They have a lot of players on that roster who really made a decent run. And like you said, Puerto Rico moving on to the final. And Team USA actually does have a chance to play in the final. They play Japan tonight in the final semifinal game, and the winner of that game gets to play Puerto Rico in the final.
What do you make of the United States thus far? Is it a successful run for them so far? Because usually for the Olympics, for even basketball, if the U.S. doesn't make it to the gold medal round, it's considered a failure in that regards. What kind of a stock are we putting in Team USA in a baseball sense right now for those that maybe don't know or follow the baseball world as much as you and others do?
Well, the last time that the U.S. was in the World Baseball Classic, it was actually Team Japan who ended their run in the semifinals. So tonight's a huge game to get past that kind of hurdle that they weren't able to cross last time. From a baseball side, this is a team that I'm actually, and it's not going to sound that fun, but I'm excited for in the future. Think about all the guys who are not playing for this USA team. Mike Trout, Mookie Betts, who were the top two guys in the MVP race last year.
Yep.
There are a lot of players who aren't even playing for this Team USA team that could make a difference down the road and who have already said, man, I'm really excited to join this team next time they play. The last game the U.S. had, they took on the Dominican Republic. They won 6-3. I was surprised. I thought the D had a better roster top to bottom, but Adam Jones made that incredible catch in center field. You had Giancarlo Stanton hit the 2-run home run late in the game to put it away. So overall, from a baseball sense, the USA's roster is very tough to beat. I actually would only stack up the Dominican Republic's against it, a team they already beat.
Talking with Peter Fiorentino here on the Morning Brew. Peter, one of the other things that we talk about a lot in the World Baseball Classic is sometimes the under-marketing, I guess, style of it, because like I said, I know it's one of those tournaments that for the baseball fans, it's kind of like the World Cup for us soccer fans, or, to an extent, it's kind of like the Super Bowl. It's like, hey, we get to see the greatest and best in the world all playing on the same stage. Do you feel like the tournament is under-marketed for those that maybe aren't as big baseball fans? Because like I said, I honestly had no idea about it until my baseball friends started talking about it again. I'm like, oh, that's right. That is still a thing. Right.
Yeah, no, that's a totally fair point. And I think to that point, baseball as a whole is under-marketed. I mean, you see players like LeBron James, you see even players like Sidney Crosby out in doing Subway commercials, out on TV, doing cool things. When was the last time you saw a Mike Trout commercial?
It's been a while. It's been a long time, honestly.
The Major League Baseball chooses one or two players a season. Last year it was Bryce Harper to kind of be their poster boy, and then that's it. They don't really do much with that. So that kind of translates into the World Baseball Classic, where they've undermarketed the whole thing. That said, though, they already hit their attendance record in the second round of games. They were at 976,000 people at a game. So I think what's especially cool about the World Baseball Classic is they are targeting baseball fans. They're not targeting the casual fans. They're targeting the fans who are going to travel a couple hundred miles to go watch their country or their team play and watch these guys outside of a normal spring training setting.
Is there anything about the World Baseball Classic that you would potentially change if you had the opportunity to, since you have such a bigger passion for it? Sometimes it's the ones that have the bigger passion. They're like, it's a great tournament, but I would really want to change this if I could. Is there anything about the tournament, in your opinion, that needs to get revamped?
Well, the rule that if we go into extra innings, you start with a runner on second, and then you start with a runner on first and second the following inning. I'm not a big fan of that.
That's interesting. Wow, I didn't know that.
Just across all sports or across all levels of baseball, I'm not a fan of that. I can't 100% recall if that rule has been implemented in World Baseball Classic, but it has been in rookie ball this year, which I'm watching a little bit of spring training. Other than that, I actually would prefer to change things up. Major League Baseball, World Baseball Classic's fun. I mean, you see guys excited, jumping up and down. I don't know if you were able to see Javi Baez's tag or slide yesterday.
Yes.
A swim move around third base. And you don't see that in Major League Baseball very often. You don't see guys with that much passion, that much emotion, and that much flair, I guess, because you get criticized for it. You get criticized for being a hothead. You don't get commended for being talented.
Yes, you're absolutely right about that one. One of the last things we want to talk about with you here, Peter, before we let you run, transitioning out of the World Baseball Classic. If there's been two things that have dominated the news, it's been the World Baseball Classic, but then it's also been Tim Tebow and his whatever it's been in spring training this season. But the Mets have finally announced that his sentence has been officially set, basically. He's going to be playing single-A ball for the New York Mets. What do you, kind of a two-part question, what do you make of this Tim Tebow spring training baseball debacle as a whole? And then do you agree or disagree with the Mets sending him now to single A? And, will he fizzle out now, or will we actually see Tim Tebow be successful, I guess, at this level?
All right, so a lot of things to weave through there.
Yeah, a lot of things, sorry.
First thing is, I'm actually really happy they're giving him a chance. I think how do I put this? The impression that people get is that everyone in the minor league system, in a Major League Baseball team's minor league system, is destined to make the major leagues, and if they don't, they're a failure, which I think is completely wrong. There are tons of players in the minor leagues who are just organizational players. Not everyone is a top prospect. Not everyone was taken in the top 5 rounds. Not everyone's going to be jumping a level every single year and make the majors in a certain amount of time. You've seen lifers in the minor leagues who spend 11, 12 years down here and never make it to the major league. And on the opposite side, you see guys who have spent 11, 12 years here and get one at bat in the major leagues to pinch hit. I mean, there's a stigma that if you're in the minor leagues, you're going to be making the major leagues, and that's not the case. I don't think that the Mets have a plan to make Tim Tebow a part of their major league roster. I think he was a very good PR move. I think They were honestly a little bit surprised with how well he swung the bat, and I think they're gonna reward him with that, with giving him a chance at a single-A team.
Yeah, and I would agree with you on that too. I just, not to jump in really fast, I find it fascinating too that you as a baseball fan and obviously worker in the industry is supportive of it, because I've heard other people that are in the baseball industry that have just absolutely crucified the Mets, have actually crucified Tebow, basically being like, how in the world is this even fair? Like, he's taking roster spots away from guys that have given their whole life to playing baseball. This is a guy who hasn't played baseball in 10 years. It's not fair. It's not fair. But as you mentioned too, it is a business. It's all about the money too at the end of the day. And if the Mets can put an extra couple thousand people in the seats and sell an extra couple $1,000s worth of Tebow jerseys, it's honestly about the money and not about, Joe Johnson down in Texas who had the lifelong dream to play for the Mets, unfortunately.
Exactly. And to your point, I mean, that's a dumb argument, to be honest. Not you personally, but the argument that he's taking up a roster spot. There's so much room in baseball. There's the Dominican Summer League. There is rookie ball. There's short season A. There's regular A, high A, double A, triple A, winter leagues. I mean, there's plenty of room for the Mets to decide which players should be on the field. Tim Tebow will not be taking anybody's roster spot, especially, I don't know if they release the specific information of where he'll be in the lineup. I'm pretty sure he's just DHing and just pinch hitting and either playing first base or right field, somewhere a very low maintenance defensive position to get him some at-bats. I do think it's interesting, though, Baxter, where they sent him. Columbia, this is their first year in Columbia. They moved from Greenville, South Carolina, and I don't think that was an accident. They took a team that moved to a new location that needs to kind of jumpstart their business, if you will, to make some money location, and they send the biggest PR move there. I think that's pretty cool, actually.
I think so too, and I think overall, I think it'll certainly help. I forget too the level of baseball that you do commentating at. You're not going to see Tim at all, are you? In any of your circles?
No, we were hoping actually. So I'm short season single A. He was sent to Class A, just standard. April 6th is when they start, all the way until early September. Our season starts the day after the Major League Baseball draft, so we get all the college players and some of the players who are in extended spring training. We start June 21st, so we're a little bit later. But he's one level above where our division rival is, the Brooklyn Cyclones. So we would have seen him if he was one level below. But I don't think a team in Brooklyn needs much more marketing help.
Yeah, no kidding, that's for sure. Well, Peter, we appreciate you taking the time this morning. Where can people continue to find your work, but also listen to you as well come baseball season?
I'm a constant tweeter, so at the Fiorentino on Twitter, and they can follow me there and tune in live.
Fantastic. I appreciate it, Peter. We'll talk to you soon, sir.
Thank you.
No problem. There goes Peter Fiorentino this morning on the Morning Brew. Good to hear from him. Good insight as well. A lot of good stuff we're getting to here in the sports world, and that's always the big thing for me too. Is you talk about Tim Tebow all the time. You talk about what his impact has meant to the sports world from a marketing perspective, and you do start to question. You're like, all right, what kind of water can we actually hold to a guy like Tim Tebow? Because we know, and you know, and she knows, and everybody knows, your dog knows that he's not going to be a Major League Baseball player. Can you actually put any stock in a guy like Tim Tebow? And I think you can to an extent if you're solely interested in signing a player that has a lot of high-level marketing to help your squad, to help everything that you're trying to do. I think that makes the most sense, honestly. Will Tim Tebow be a Major League Baseball star? I don't think so. Will you see him maybe play a couple of years? Yeah, I think you might get at least this season out of him. Aside from that, I don't know really much what else you can get out of Tim Tebow, in all honesty. So we'll have to keep an eye on that, of course. We know that Jaymee loves to hate on Tim Tebow. I don't mind him as a person, but as a baseball player, that's where I get a little crazy with at times, is whether or not a guy like Timmy T should be taking up roster spots, I guess, in the major league system as a whole. But great stuff there from Peter Fiorentino as well, too. Time now to move along with the program. We're going to be heading to the world of the NFL now, and one of our NFL correspondents, Caleb Wahlgren, is going to be joining us on the program now. Caleb, it's great to hear from you, sir. A very good morning to you. How are we doing today?
Good morning, Baxter. Things are going well. It's nice and warm down here in Oklahoma City. I heard Peter talking about how his 30s or 40s. I think it's 60 for a low here this morning. We're probably going to hit 80s or 90s today.
Caleb, you're breaking up. We might have to let you go. I'm sorry. You're too warm for us. We gotta let you go. I'm pretty sure. Here, let me check my phone here really fast. I'm pretty positive we're hanging in like the 20s right now. Oh, 38. Oh, no. I'm sorry. Jumped to 40. It is 40 balmy degrees right now. It's going to be a high of 46 today, so we are ecstatic about that. People were actually wearing shorts yesterday because it was above 32 degrees. I hate those kind of people. I'm like, guys, wait till it's like 60 or 70. Why are you putting shorts on when it could still snow in 5 minutes? That doesn't make sense to me. But
yeah, I understand. Sometimes people down here, whenever it gets to like 50, they're like, I need to go put on my parka. Yeah. So we have the opposite problem.
Yeah, my mom down in Florida, she says she has to put socks on anytime it gets below 80 degrees, basically. I'm like, okay, Mom. I'm like, you just need to calm down, basically. But people love the warm weather. I don't blame them for that. That's for sure. That's why I lived in Florida for 8 years, I guess, as well too. But enough about the weather, Caleb. We need to talk about the storms that are brewing in the NFL as a whole, mainly about NFL free agency. A couple of the big names that are still circulating around all have to do with the quarterbacks and the running backs. Of course, your mainstays like Jay Cutler, Tony Romo, Adrian Peterson, Colin Kaepernick has been a hot topic as well recently. What are your thoughts or potential landing places for any of those names, or will they even find landing places? Or what do you make of all that?
I think a lot of what's left with free agency is depending on what people are really looking for, because if you're Jay Cutler or Colin Kaepernick and you're looking for a place to go start right away, you're probably not going to find it. I mean, Josh McCown just got signed by the Jets, so that's another opening that's no longer available. I I don't think anyone wants to trade anything to get Tony Romo because you don't want to give up someone you could have for like a pick for that you could have for 15 years for a guy that could get hurt 3 plays into the season in Tony Romo.
You're right.
So it's just one of those things where there's a lot of, well, what are people willing to take at this point? Does Colin Kaepernick want to be a backup somewhere for maybe, $3 or $4 million? I don't know. I don't know if he's going to keep looking for somewhere to try to start.
That's the hard thing for me, and on this, all honesty, is we talked about Colin Kaepernick a lot yesterday on a couple of the different shows, and we kept saying that, is Colin Kaepernick a starting quarterback in the NFL? I don't know if he is. Yes, he's still young, but aside from the one season that he basically got his highlight mixtapes put together because the Packers defense, who has been historically bad the last decade almost to an extent, gave him his big huge contract because he proved that he was a mobile quarterback. I don't think you're going to see him as a starting quarterback. Would he go to a Houston and be a starter? Sure, maybe. Would he go to, I don't know. Where else do you even potentially put him? Because he wants to be a starter. He's old enough that he wants to be a starter. He's not going to want to likely go sit behind a Blake Bortles or a Ryan Tannehill, for some of those other teams that already have a distinguished starting quarterback. But do you feel like whoever does sign him is going to ultimately end up overpaying for him?
To be honest, I think with Colin Kaepernick, he's probably going to end up getting underpaid. Just because I think that a lot of people view his off the field or on the side of the fields, issues as a big red flag. Personally, one spot that I think would be interesting, but I know they don't have a lot of cap room, would be the Buffalo Bills if he went there as a backup. Because I think that if Tyrod Taylor gets hurt and you have another mobile quarterback in Colin Kaepernick, to Sammy Watkins and, rush for a couple of first downs a game, I don't see what's all that different on the field about them.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, honestly. I mean, realistically, you're going from maybe, if anything, you're looking at a little height difference. But aside from that, they play basically the exact same style. I mean, they're both mobile quarterbacks that have decent arms, but are not, great or elite quarterbacks. They might fall into that good category, but I would never call either Tyrod Taylor or Colin Kaepernick a great quarterback for sure. Buffalo's an interesting scenario too that you mentioned that. I mean, they just restructured Tyrod Taylor's contract for him to take a $10 million pay cut to stay on the team. I don't know for sure. I mean, you might see a guy like Tyrod be like, listen, guys, I don't necessarily know if I even want to be here because you already screwed me out of $10 million. Colin Kaepernick coming in might even just add more salt to the wound, and Tyrod could maybe even try to be out of there by week 6 from a trade clause kind of a thing.
I mean, it's always up in the air. That's one of the fun things about free agency. It's going to happen until it starts happening.
Yes.
I know. When you mentioned the other names, like with Jay Cutler, I don't think he's getting a chance to start anywhere. Because even though he's probably the greatest quarterback in Bears history, he's just got that awful, like, I'm going to sit over here and be depressed look that, like, it's unfortunate for him because I think he's probably a good quarterback. He's not the leader that people want at quarterback. He's not Peyton Manning. He's not Tom Brady. He's not Aaron Rodgers. He just kind of is like, it's like he's an introverted quarterback, and that's not what people want out of today's NFL superstars.
Would you see a guy like Jay Cutler or even a Tony Romo go to a team that has a young, budding starting quarterback like an Andrew Luck or a Jameis Winston and play the mentor role? Do you feel like, I feel like Tony would be the better mentor of the two, just for the reasons that you mentioned why Jay may not necessarily be the best guy to train you, but from a skill perspective, obviously Jay is still a good backup quarterback if your starter goes down. But I guess number one, do you think either of them would ever consider being a backup? But number two, would they consider do that? Would they ever consider being that leader or kind of a sense, or that mentor to the younger starting quarterback?
I think at some point you have to consider your options in the NFL. Let's face it, if being a backup quarterback is going to get you $4 or $5 million a year, and you pretty much are sitting there holding a clipboard and helping someone study film and not really getting hit. It's kind of a posh job.
I'd say that's not the worst. That's not the worst financial move you can make, honestly.
Absolutely. I mean, you mentioned Tannehill. I think Cutler behind Tannehill would be a great fit because they're both pretty athletic. I think that Cutler could probably show Tannehill how to throw a little bit better deep ball because I don't think that Tannehill is the best at that. Whereas with Romo, I think that he's still probably going to hold out a spot to start if he can get cut and get into free agency. I think Houston is still probably the best fit for him just with their offensive line and young receivers and everyone, but it's just a matter of time at this point for him, I believe.
Talking with Caleb Wahlgren here on the Morning Brew about the NFL as a whole, one of our NFL insiders and correspondents. Caleb, transitioning away from the free agent side of things and looking at the NFL potential proposed rule changes. That's a big thing for a lot of folks, especially the change about doing a 10-minute overtime period. There's been this debacle, at least among Green Bay Packer fans and a couple other fans the last 2 or 3 years about, we didn't get a chance to show us, or they scored, or this, the overtime flip, goes all over the place, whether it be from the coin flip, not flipping, or, teams going down and scoring and not getting a chance, basically. The 10-minute overtime rule I find fascinating in the sense that you would actually get potentially 2 or 3, maybe 4 if you're really lucky, opportunities to be on offense and try to score more points and close out the game. How do you like the potential proposed 10-minute overtime rule?
I feel like it's a Band-Aid on a fix that really, when you look at the NFL, it does have the inferior overtime to the college product. I mean, both teams getting the ball at the 25-yard line, and we're just going to keep doing this until someone takes the lead over the other team, after both teams have had a chance. And then, of course, third overtime, you have to go for 2.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to see the NFL take some sort of concept of that, even if they said, hey, we're going to back it up to the 40-yard line. That way you can't just kick a field goal right away, or if you get a penalty, you're out of field goal range for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But that way both teams can still get the ball, but it's not really a time issue. I don't understand why having a shorter overtime is going to help the games be any better, because there was plenty of games this year where one team went down and kicked a field goal and the other team went down and kicked a field goal, and then there was like 3 minutes left. So you're going to tell me that they have to go down and kick a field goal to tie the game sooner because they don't want to have a loss on their record?
Yeah, it's like, so now what do we do? That is the big thing. I mean, I'm a classic person, honestly. I feel like you just, you put both of your kickers on the 50-yard line, or you both say, all right, you each take a 50-yard field goal. If you make it, great. If you miss it, you don't. And then, whoever makes the field goal wins. But I'm biased to kickers, as you and many people know. So I feel like the kickers should just get to do everything come overtime. But realistically, though, yeah, a 10-minute period makes a lot of sense to me in this, in the regards of, listen, you each are going to get a couple chances, and whoever wins after the end of 10 minutes is the ultimate winner. And if nobody still is a winner, game's a tie. You had 10 minutes to figure it out, plus the whole rest of the game. Now move on and figure out something else, I guess, with your day and with your life as a whole, basically, if you're the NFL team, kind of a thing. But I can see why some people would have an issue with it, but overall, I do personally support a 10-minute overtime period if the NFL decides to go to that. They just need to make sure that the rules are officially established and really just kind of stick out to being, all right, it's 10 minutes and you get this, you'll start at this line, or is it just a whole other quarter, basically, where you have a kickoff and you do it all from there instead of starting at, as you mentioned, the 25 or the 40-yard line, basically. One of the other things that has been a debate for a while in the NFL is full-time officials, or full-time referees, basically. The NFL is talking about potentially hiring several of them to work at the league office and also, continuously be around it, because guys that are referees right now already get paid over $100,000 a year anyway, but that's no health insurance, there's no paid time off. What would having full-time referees help the NFL going forward?
I think full-time NFL referees is a great idea. I think you look at sports and you look at the scrutiny that these referees have to go through, that you don't want to be someone who goes into work on Tuesday somewhere else and can potentially be badgered by one of their coworkers because of a call that they made. I mean, if you really want to be the best product that's in the league, among all the sports leagues, you need to have your refs be high quality. So if that means making them full-time, make them full-time.
That makes sense to me, yeah. I guess I can't really argue with you in that regards. I mean, make them full-time. But aside from that, though, I mean, aside from, potentially getting badgered, I don't think some of those guys are, a lot of these guys are attorneys or, even doctors or other things like that. I mean, if you miss a call, I mean, are you going to be badgered at your law firm the next day, basically being like, listen, Joe, you missed the call. What the heck, man? You'll be like, all right, move on. I still make more money than you do in a lifetime because I'm a lawyer and a full-time and a referee as well, too. I mean, I get what you're saying in the sense of like the schoolyard where people are going to, jar you a little bit for getting the calls wrong to an extent, but I don't know. Full-time referees are a little weird to me, but maybe that might help establish more official rules instead of these guys almost coming in for like, a couple of months out of the year being like, all right, we're here, we're going to ref the games, and then we're going to move on and go back to our regular lives. Or like you mentioned too, going back to their desk job the next day after they just, did a Sunday night football game between Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady. It's like, whoa, a bit of a drop off from what they're doing in the work field as a whole. One of the other things too here, Caleb, that has been a topic of potential change is, we saw this a lot last year. I was surprised how much we saw this, is the defensive players could potentially be banned from leaping over the line of scrimmage on a field goal or extra point attempts. I get it, it's a safety concern, but at the same time, if you time it right, that's a potentially game-changing play that could happen if you get your hands up and you just block the kick. Your thoughts about if this rule should be in place or not?
I think the NFL is going to make it a rule just because they've made so much emphasis on player safety. And if this has any sort of a twinge of player safety, they need to put it in place. Personally, I thought it was exciting to see people jump over the line of scrimmage. I mean,
I agree.
Isn't that part of the point of being able to block kicks? I mean, isn't that why the extra point got moved back? Because you don't want to see people just free time? I mean, they want every play to be interesting. Well, if you want the plays to be interesting, being able to jump the line of scrimmage is sure interesting because that's a super easy block. If they don't disallow it, do you put someone back there as like a field goal protector to like block it in front of the holder like you have in punt coverage? I mean, there's so much strategy that you could put with this if you just let it be. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think the NFL is going to put a push on that.
Yeah, and ultimately, too, it's not like guys are trying to jump over the line and, absolutely destroying the center's back or, like, stepping on somebody's neck or something as the ball is being snapped. Like, these guys pretty much are jumping straight through, and they usually just go for the block. It's not like they're trying to hit the defenseless kicker or even the holder, for gosh sakes. They're just trying to get their hands up to make a block. I don't necessarily know the rules, I guess. If I timed my jump appropriately and the kicker still hasn't made contact yet, which I don't know why, that would be the slowest kicker ever, but can I just straight dive and just take out the kicker? But then that might be roughing the kicker. Our kickers is protected as quarterbacks. Like there's so many different weird ways I feel like you could go with that.
Well, typically, I mean, the rule with punters is that if you block the punt, it's not called roughing the punter. Mm-hmm. Even if you block it and happen to like tackle them while their legs up in the air. I mean, you can get away with that. I would think if the kick hasn't been kicked, you could lay out the holder or the kicker, and that would obviously be a horrible situation because most holders are punters too, so they're not
right
the most athletic of the players on the field.
That's true.
So you just don't want to see someone get hurt because a linebacker jumps over the line of scrimmage. I don't know if it's going to take until that happens because with my background in insurance, companies are very reactive to things. Mm-hmm. And someone got hurt and it was in a huge game. And, let's say Dallas was going to kick a field goal to win the game. They were down 2. And Dan Bailey, who's young and promising, broke his leg because someone jumped over the line of scrimmage and hit him after he kicked the ball. I mean, people are going to then be like, oh, wait, we need to pass this rule.
Yeah.
So
It is more reactive right now because people are kind of just being like, let's just, let's put it in place now because no kicker wants to be that first guy that gets his leg broken or, gets knocked out for 8 weeks with a torn ACL or whatever because, Earl Thomas of the Seahawks flew over the line and just decimated them before they kicked a ball.
Absolutely.
Jeff on Facebook asked a good question here too, Caleb, and maybe you can help me out with this. He says, what do the leagues have full-time officials? To my knowledge, Major League Baseball does, purely because those guys are, playing 180-plus games a year. I think the NBA has full-time officials as well too. I don't have the official stat in front of me. Do you happen to know any of the official leagues off the top of your head?
I do want to agree with you that Major League Baseball and the NBA both do have full-time referees, simply because Major League Baseball, all those games, and they have like 4 umpires per game. Mm-hmm. It's kind of impossible not to have those guys be paid because they're going to be playing, they're going to be doing, all of those games pretty much. NBA, I just know that they'll reference them a lot more. I would say that NBA refs are probably full-time as well. I'm not aware for hockey. I know that one of the things that was brought up with college basketball this weekend with some of those bad calls was if college basketball should even have full-time refs. I'm like, if you're going to debate if college basketball should have full-time refs, the NFL should definitely have full-time refs. I mean, it's actually a sports league.
I mean, honestly, the way you look at it, though, if you have... I feel like there's no win-win situation, though, because if you have full-time refs and the bad calls still keep coming, people are going to be saying even more. They'll be like, this is your full-time job. How could you not get that holding call right? How did you not get that charge right? But then it's like, if you're not a full-time paid player or paid referee, it's like, well, if maybe these guys were full-time, maybe they would actually care more and actually try. Like, I feel like you're not going to win no matter what you do, whether you're a full-time official or you're just, part-time in the sense that you only come in for the tournaments or you only come in for a couple months out of the year.
I mean, I can understand where you're coming with that. It's one of those things where getting the right call all the time is never going to happen, unfortunately. You just have to get the most right calls right.
Yes.
And if you get full-time refs and they're able to do that, then that's what you need. In general, NFL refs get it right probably 80 to 90% of the time right now. So you could argue they may not need to go full-time, but, I mean, it's one of those things where is there holding on probably 70% of plays offensively? Yeah.
Yeah.
What exactly is pass interference? Well, it just depends on... well, what is a catch? That's a never-ending debate. So.
That's true. You're absolutely right about that. Robert on Facebook does make a good point. He says Ed Hockley is a full-time referee, I think. Well, Ed is not a full-time referee because there's no full-time officials in the NFL, but he does certainly seem like he would be with as much as you see him. I think his muscles, both of his biceps are full-time, but I don't know if Ed himself is actually a full-time referee or not yet, but I'm sure he would be one on the short list of guys to be potentially made a full-time official right off the bat. Jeff also says baseball umpires still get criticized, and that won't go away, and that's kind of going off of what I was just saying too. It's no matter what way you look at it, you're never going to get not criticized. People love to criticize anything from the pack of gum at the store to who the president is. People are going to always have an opinion. People are always going to criticize something just because that's what we are. We're not a unified people. We do not all believe the same thing or like the same thing. Everybody has an opinion. That's why people get criticized. You might think it was pass interference. I might have thought it was the greatest no call in history. It's totally different, honestly, and that's, I think, what makes the sports world so great, in all honesty.
Yeah, I mean, you want to have some sort of human element. I mean, there's a reason why fans like to argue over calls. In the end, the players are the ones who make the plays, and, if there's a bad call anywhere in the game, they have to have the chance to try to make up for that. So
right. I completely agree with you on that one, too. And Travis joins in here as well, too. He says, there will always be criticism. That's human nature. Yes, I completely agree. Last thing here for you, Caleb, before we let you run, is a little game that I want to play with you called Contender or Pretender. And in terms of the NFL as a whole. So free agency, of course, is still going on. The draft is yet to take place, but you're starting to get a true idea of certain teams and what they may or may not do this upcoming season. So I'm going to give you 3 teams from the NFC, 3 teams from the AFC, and we'll kind of go back and forth a little bit, okay?
Let's do it.
All right, so we'll start in the NFC. We will go first and foremost with the Atlanta Falcons. Are they a contender or a pretender in 2017 after a great 2016 season?
I think the Atlanta Falcons are definitely still a contender. They still have a lot of their core pieces in place. Matt Ryan's there. Their defense got a lot better. If I remember correctly, I believe they had recently signed Dontari Poe, the big defensive lineman from the Chiefs. And, I mean, that's just going to make them even more difficult to defend or to attack, because he's going to clog up the middle and take 2 guys, and then they have those speed rushers on the outside. Their defense is legit, and they're going to stay around, I believe.
Yeah, my biggest issue with the Falcons is that I feel like they've been one of those. We've seen this trend, at least in the NFC, the last couple of years, haven't we? It was the Seahawks, it was the Panthers, now the Falcons. That they all get that surge, and then all of a sudden that next year they just are almost a shell of themselves at times. So Atlanta certainly is an interesting prospect. I'm going to say they're going to be a contender as well, purely because they haven't really lost anybody, and I'd like to think that, in theory, if you don't lose a lot of your core players and Matt Ryan is your quarterback, you're going to have a chance. So we'll have to see what the Falcons do, but you and I both going contender on that one. The next team is the Seattle Seahawks, mostly because of the Eddie Lacy signing and just the team as a whole. Are the Seahawks contenders or pretenders in 2017?
I'm going with I'm going to actually switch. I'm going to say pretender. I still love their defense. Is a quality quarterback. I just really don't trust their offensive line. And if we're talking contender as possible Super Bowl contender, I don't know how they're going to get past, someone like the Falcons, who's got that good of a rush. Also, I think that the Cardinals are still the best team in that division. So I'm going to be going with pretender for Seattle.
All right. I am going to have to pretend with you as well. I think that Seattle, on paper, as you mentioned, the defense is still very, very talented, but the offense struggled tremendously last year. Signing Eddie Lacy was not the answer that the team needed. Had it been an Adrian Peterson or somebody that can actually change a game, I think that might have been a different conversation we'd be having right now. However, Eddie Lacy is the guy they decided to put their money behind. I'm not buying it. I think they're going to be a pretender in 2017. Last NFC team for you, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Made it a couple of off-season signings. Deshaun Jackson's now down there as well, among other players. Tampa Bay was on the brink last season of potentially becoming a playoff team, potentially making a noise in the NFC. Are they a contender or a pretender in 2017?
I'm still going to go with pretender. I don't trust their defense. I know that they had Vincent Jackson across from Mike Evans, and now they're going to have Deshaun Jackson across from Mike Evans. Granted, Deshaun still has great speed. They still have the muscle hamster Doug Martin at running back. Jameis is still developing. But other than Levante David, I don't know anyone on that defense that I would sit here and say, oh, yeah, that guy's an all-pro.
Right, I would agree with you on that one. That was the big thing for me too. This isn't the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense that decimated the Raiders in the Super Bowl in the early 2000s. That part for me is going to be a hard one. They don't have Warren Sapp on their team anymore. They don't have Derek Brooks on their team anymore. So will the Buccaneers be a contender in 2017? No, I think they're still a pretender. If they shore up the defense, maybe through the draft and a little bit of the remaining free agents, we might be having a different conversation in maybe a month or two. But for right now, the Buccaneers are also a pretender for me. Moving over to the AFC, before we let you go here, Caleb, the 3 teams we can kind of go through these a little bit quicker. The Colts, the Jets, and, of course, the Patriots. So if you want to just run through your 3 thoughts on the Colts, Jets, and Patriots, and then I'll give you my 3 thoughts as well.
All right, I'll go through those real quick. I'm going to say the Colts are a contender simply because they are in the weakest division in football, the AFC South, because Texans can't figure out what they're going to do at quarterback. The Colts definitely have a shot at getting there and getting into the playoffs and seeing what happens. The Jets, I can't pick any other AFC East teams to be a contender because the Patriots own that division.
Right.
So, pretender Jets, sorry. Patriots are definitely a contender. I mean, you're talking about a team that's won Super Bowls recently. They won it last year in a huge comeback, probably the most epic comeback in Super Bowl history. Not really much of a debate on that. But you're going to definitely say the Patriots are a contender, and that's who you would put as being probably the favorite for the 2018 Super Bowl as well.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that one. Yeah, for me, my three, the Jets are clearly a pretender. The Colts actually are a pretender in my book as well, too, just purely because Andrew Luck can only do so much, and I think that he was still a little overhyped. He's had good times here and there, but I'm not fully sold on what Andrew Luck is, and the Colts defense really is what gets me, because you can have a phenomenal quarterback, as we see, for Packer fans. Aaron Rodgers is a great quarterback, but the defense is not always there to bail the offense out at times, and the Colts are still struggling defensively, so they're a pretender regardless of whoever the Texans might have as their starting quarterback. And then, yeah, I agree with you. The Patriots certainly are a contender and will be until Belichick and Brady decide to hang it up after they win their 9th or 10th Super Bowl, I guess. I did have one more team that I forgot to ask you about that I had written down in my notes, is the Cleveland Browns. And I know that sounds kind of funny, but they have made a lot of off-season signings. They've shored up their offensive line. They've started to bring in a couple more weapons on both sides of the ball. Is it way too soon to say that this team is a contender to at least even make the playoffs? I'm not necessarily saying a Super Bowl contender, but are they a contender in the sense of that they might even make the playoffs?
No, they're not. Sorry, Browns fans. It is way too early. I mean, if you make me do a quick pick for AFC playoffs, you're going Patriots, Steelers, Texans, Chiefs, and probably the Ravens. I just don't see that the rising in that division quickly. I like what they're doing. They got J.C. Treader. They got a couple of other offensive linemen. Mm-hmm. They're doing things the right way and building it up.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on the Browns, but they might be one of those teams that could surprise many in the next couple of years, so we'll have to see. But Caleb, I appreciate you taking the time to join us on the show today. Great insight from you as well, too. Where can people continue to find yourself on social media to keep up with the latest news from you?
I'm on Twitter at kdiggs74. That's with 2 G's. So that is the primary spot to find me. I'm usually tweeting out different stuff there all the time.
Phenomenal, Caleb. Well, we appreciate you taking the time today, and we hope to have you back on soon, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, there goes Caleb Wahlgren, one of our NFL correspondents here on the Brew Sports Network. Good stuff from him, good stuff from Peter Fiorentino as well. If you missed any of the show today, there is no Jaymee Ebbers today, unfortunately, as you can see based off the wide shot. I haven't just been completely ignoring Jaymee for the last hour. She just, unfortunately, is not here. Off on assignment, hopes to return tomorrow or on, Wednesday? Tomorrow or for Thursday. I know what day it is, I promise. So good stuff from her, good stuff from the gang as a whole. So, Jaymee, we miss you. Come back soon. Aside from that, looking here through some of the other comments going on, Robert says, "Love me some Cardinals." Yeah, they're an interesting conundrum, those Cardinals down there in Arizona. Robert also says, "I'd like to see the Browns get to 500." I agree with you in that one. You look at the division that the Browns are sitting in: Bengals, Ravens, Browns, Steelers. Unfortunately, the Browns are going to continue to be that on the whooping block basically until the Ravens or the Bengals decide to make some changes. However, the Bengals have been a little bit of the last couple of years. Andy Dalton, the Red Rocket or whatever people call him, not that great of a quarterback in all honesty. A.J. Green, phenomenal wide receiver. We'll have to see what ends up coming from him and how long he decides to stay in Cincinnati. Baltimore, Joe Flacco is not an elite quarterback, so please stop with that. If you're Pittsburgh, as long as Ben Roethlisberger is your quarterback, you have a chance. Aside if he's not, Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell can't bail you out consistently. That's just not possible. You need a good quarterback that can go out and harness the power of the offense around him. If I'm Pittsburgh, I do draft a quarterback this year. I do start grooming that next generation of Ben Roethlisberger, because Bell and Brown are young, talented players. And you need to be able to have someone that can step up behind Roethlisberger eventually to take over, because right now the people in place to replace Ben Roethlisberger are not going to do anything of adequate value, in my personal opinion. That's pretty much everything I got for you guys today. Coming up next on the Brew Sports Network will be our NFL show. So if you didn't get enough of our NFL talk today, it's going to be Pick 6 with Tanner Burke. That's going to be starting at 9 a.m. Central Time live right here on the Brew Sports Network. Tanner's already told me that they've got some really great stuff in store for you guys today. He's going to have a whole bevy of either co-hosts and correspondents as well too that you're not going to want to miss, so make sure you tune in for that. Aside from that, you will catch halftime as well too at 11 a.m. Central Time with myself and Tanner Burke after the show that we had yesterday with tying things to our heads and throwing soccer balls and just drinking. I really don't know where we can go from this, honestly, so we'll have to see what takes place. But a very special thanks again to Peter Fiorentino and Caleb Wahlgren for joining me on the program today. Thank you to all of you as well, too, for tuning in, for commenting. If you have a comment that you want to jump in, we always go back and try to comment and answer any questions or thoughts you guys might have as well, too. Just go ahead and drop that comment below. Also, hit that share button as well so folks can get more insight to what Brew Sports is. If you ever miss a show, of course, our Facebook page is the best place to find all of that, but our website as well, brewsportsnet.com. Also go to our YouTube channel, Brew Sports. And if you're more of a podcaster than a video watcher, you can get all the latest episodes of all the Brew Sports shows on iTunes. Just head over to iTunes and search for Brew Sports. Search for the name of your favorite show. If it's The Morning Brew, if it's Pick 6, if it's Double Dribble, any of those shows, just search for them, and they'll all pop right up for you, and you can hit that download and subscribe right there. I'm Baxter Colburn. Thanks so much for tuning in to The Morning Brew. Like I said, coming up next will be Pick 6 with Tanner Burke. Don't forget to tune in for that one at 9 a.m. Central Time. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody. We'll see you back here again on The Morning Brew tomorrow, live at 7 a.m. Central Time. Enjoy the rest of your day, and have a great Tuesday morning, afternoon, and evening. For more here on Brew Sports, we'll see you guys at 9 a.m. Central.